Life today is far easier and honors basic human dignity, but back in the past, those born different weren't nearly as lucky. From the 18th to the 19th century, people with strange appearances or rare medical conditions were often seen as curiosities instead of individuals. Many were pushed aside by society, while others ended up showcased in traveling circuses, their lives turned into public entertainment. In this video, we look at the 15 circus freaks they never want you to see again. Let's begin with number 15, the woolly horse. Long before Photoshop or CGI, Barnum knew how to spin a story, and the woolly horse was a classic. The animal itself was real, likely a Bashkir curly from Indiana. But Barnum tied it to the explorer John C. Fremont, who had just returned from a Rocky Mountain expedition. Barnum claimed Fremont's team discovered this never-before-seen species at high altitudes. That was a lie, but it sold tickets. He plastered posters across New York. Nature's last wonder, part elephant, part deer, part horse. The public swarmed. The grift worked so well that Fremont's father-in-law, Senator Thomas Hart Benton, sued Barnum for fraud. But that only helped. People now wanted to see the hoax. Even Fremont got tagged the woolly horse by enemies in politics. The stunt blurred fact and fiction so cleverly that Barnum became the real attraction. He didn't just sell oddities, he sold the story. And when the crowd came, he laughed all the way to the bank. Number 14, Monster Show Maven. William Cameron, W.C. Koo was born in 1836, and he wasn't a showman in the Barnum mold. He was the man who built the system that made Barnum possible. Starting as a teenage printer, Koo joined Maybe's Grand Olympian Arena in 1853, managing its sideshows before moving up through the circus world. From 1866 to 1869, he ran the Yankee Robinson Circus, learning how to make a traveling show profitable. Then came his legendary partnership with Barnum in 1871, forming P.T. Barnum's Grand Traveling Museum, Menagerie, Circus, and Hippodrome. Barnum had fame. Koo had the brains. He invented the circus train, making long-distance travel possible, and expanded the ring system from 1 to 3, tripling audience size. By 1875, the two men split, but Koo kept innovating, launching his United Monster shows, an aquarium, and later, Wild West attractions. He died in 1895, not as a showman, but as the man who revolutionized how the world watched wonder move. He was not a freak, but a genius. Number 13, the human volcano. Signor Barnello, born Edward A. Barnwell in 1857, didn't just eat fire, he built an entire career on it. Starting in Decatur, he performed magic and toured with Professor Morley before rebranding himself as a fire act in San Francisco in 1879. His skills weren't limited to flame swallowing. He walked on coals, handled burning objects, and even made soup jokes, earning praise from none other than Houdini. He wasn't a freak, he was an entrepreneur. His pitch cards survive, placing him in dime museums, sideshows, and even vaudeville. In 1890, he published The Red Demons, or Mysteries of Fire and Barnello's Voodoo Incantations, How to Eat Fire, some of the first guides of their kind. In 1893, he briefly launched The Magician, likely America's first magic magazine. Barnello died in 1910 at just 52. No one knows if it was the fire that finally caught up with him, but what's certain is this: he sparked a legacy that still burns. Number 12, America's Siamese twins. Mary and Margaret Gibb were born in Mount Holyoke in 1912, joined twins whose arrival made medical news. They were among the first conjoined twins born without a C-section. So, with just one option in hand, by age 14, they had left home to perform, creating an act that combined music, comedy, and personality. They sang, danced, and played piano together, billed as America's Siamese Twins. The Gibbs sisters toured with Ringling Brothers, Barnum and Bailey, and Cole Brothers circuses, becoming fixtures on both U.S. and European circuits. Their performances weren't built on shock alone. They had rhythm, wit, and real talent. After years on the road, they retired in their 30s, opening a small craft store back in their hometown. They made and sold handmade items, living quietly after decades under bright lights. By 1949, they left show business completely. When they died in 1967, they were remembered not as curiosities, but as two beautiful women who stayed in perfect sync, in every sense. Number 11. Major Edward Newell. Edward stood barely 3 feet tall, but carried himself like a general. Billed variously as Major Edward Newell or General Grant Jr., he was one of P.T. Barnum's best-known little people. His fame came not just from performance, but from his 1877 marriage to Minnie Warren, sister of Lavinia Warren, Tom Thumb's famous wife. Their wedding made headlines, though tragedy struck a year later when Minnie died giving birth. Grief drove Newell overseas. He resettled in London, where he eventually married Mary Ann Drake, a woman of average height. Unlike many of Barnum's performers, Newell never faded into obscurity. He kept working in variety acts across Britain, where his poise and dignity won him steady audiences. He died in 1919, remembered for his connection to one of America's most famous circus families and for carrying on the legacy of Barnum's Little Royals with grace, discipline, and the quiet pride of a true showman. Number 10. Princess Raja. Princess Raja, sometimes spelled Raja, was born Rose Ferran and carved out a rare path, from Coney Island belly dancer to vaudeville headliner. She started performing in the 1890s, right when America was gripped by Oriental dance fever. Her act blurred categories, part sideshow attraction, part mainstage spectacle. She danced at the 1904 St. Louis World's Fair, captured on film by Edison's crew, a reel that still exists online. Her signature routines included the Cleopatra dance, snake dance, and the jaw-dropping Arabian chair dance, where she held a chair in her teeth while dancing. In 1909, Willie Hammerstein spotted her at Huber's Museum and booked her for Victoria Theater, the biggest vaudeville house in New York. She went on to earn up to $1,000 a week on the Keith and Orpheum circuits. She was married briefly to producer Clifford Fisher and then divorced by 1921. Raja performed well into her later years, keeping mystery, grace, and spectacle alive long after others faded. Number 9. The Religiously Tattooed Woman. Anna Mae Burlingston was born in Spokane in 1893, and this lady never set out to be a sideshow act. That changed after she married tattoo artist Charles Red Gibbons in 1912. To showcase his skill and build an act, he tattooed over 80% of her skin with imagery inspired by Raphael and Michelangelo, saints, angels, and sacred scenes that turned her body into a living mural. Under the name Artoria Gibbons, she stepped into the spotlight as the woman covered in holy tattoos. Her career stretched across half a century, from small carnivals to the grand tents of Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey. Unlike most tattooed women whose fame faded fast, Artoria kept performing into her 70s and didn't retire until 1981. She lived until 1985, one of the last remaining figures from the classic circus era. She wasn't just a canvas. She was devotion and endurance inked into flesh, a lifetime displayed in color. Number 8. The Great Raymond. Maurice Francois Sanders, known to the world as the Great Raymond, was born in 1877 and lived a magician's dream before most could spell illusion. His first stage experience came as a boy performing trapeze tricks and riding horses in Adam Forepaw's Circus. By 15, he had turned to magic, crafting an act that mixed escape artistry with grand illusion. By 1902, His escapology shows in Chicago drew comparisons to Houdini, though Raymond added charm where Houdini offered defiance. His motto summed it up: 2/3 mystery, 1/3 vaudeville. With his wife as assistant, he toured the world 7 times, filling theaters from Europe to Asia with a spectacle that combined elegance, danger, and misdirection. His illusions were large-scale, theatrical, and beautifully staged. He wasn't trying to outdo Houdini. He was building his own empire of wonder. Raymond died in 1948, leaving behind a career that stretched from sawdust rings to global stages and never lost its spark. And how can it? Number 7. The Candy Kids. Jean Brigand, born in Austria in 1869, toured Europe as Prince Colibri before making his way to America. On stage, he handled comedy until he met Inez Lewis, a little person from Iowa who could sing, dance, and steal a crowd's attention in seconds. They married around 1905, turning their chemistry into a vaudeville act that audiences loved. Together, they were the Candy Kids, the faces of John G. Woodward Candy, smiling from posters and traveling the country as miniature ambassadors of sweetness. Away from the spotlight, they built a home in Council Bluffs, Iowa, scaled perfectly to their size, a home that still stands as their quiet monument. Jean passed in 1944. Inez kept the legacy alive until 1965. While others in the business lived fast and faded, they built a marriage, a career, and a life that outlasted applause. The Brigants weren't a spectacle. They were a partnership that actually worked. All right, now, let's head over to number 6, the world's smallest mother. Dauletta Boykin, born Dolly Dodd, stood just over 3 feet tall, but carried herself like a full-sized force. Her stage name, Dauletta, fit perfectly, a living doll with grit. Originally from Quincy, Illinois, she married fellow little person Major Boykin, proudly taking his name and building an act around motherhood. Her 2 children were average-sized, born through cesarean section, and she often posed with them for publicity shots that amazed audiences. The world's smallest mother wasn't just a gimmick, it was her truth. After Major Boykin died, she remarried a 6-foot trick roper named Cherokee Buck, a man who left the bearded lady Baroness de Barksey for her. Newspapers couldn't get enough of it. The height contrast made headlines, but Dauletta's confidence stole the show. She performed with circuses and sideshows well into old age, her life a mix of grit, humor, and pure will. When she died in Joplin, Missouri at 67, she left behind a legend of small stature and unmatched presence. Now let's head over to number 5, Alzoria Lewis and Johanna Dickens. Alzoria Lewis and Johanna shared no bloodline, yet for decades they were introduced as the Sisters. Alzoria, born in Brooklyn in 1912, had shortened limbs, 6 fingers on each hand, and uneven toes. Promoters called her Turtle Girl or Walrus Girl, building Southern fairy tales around her that were pure invention. She crawled on all 4s, sometimes under her married name, Alzoria Green. Alongside her was Johanna Dickens, a dwarf born in the 1920s, branded as the Bear Girl. The two became a Coney Island staple from the 1930s to the 1950s, side by side under hot lights and cruel banners. Crowds came to gawk, but the story that lingered wasn't deformity, it was persistence. They stayed, they worked, they turned exploitation into survival. Not sisters by family, but bound by the same world that used and ignored them, Lewis and Dickens found power in being seen, even when the world looked for the wrong reasons. Number 4, the White Giantess of Massachusetts. Harriet Big Hattie. Bowen was born in Fairhaven near Buzzards Bay and became known as the White Giantess of Massachusetts. Her reported peak weight of 783 pounds made her one of New England's most famous sideshow stars. She toured with Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey and appeared in Buffalo Bill's and Pawnee Bill's Wild West shows. Dime museums from New York to St. Louis displayed her, and audiences lined up to stare. The white in her billing wasn't about race. It was old circus marketing, a label meant to separate her from other giantesses of color. Offstage, her life was quieter and far tougher. Travel drained her health, and the constant gawking wore her down. Yet every photo shows the same mix of strength and exhaustion, a woman proud of the life she'd built from the body she had. Hattie died around 50, worn but unforgettable. For a time, she was the biggest name, literally, in the tent. Number 3. Mabel Stark. Mabel Stark stood barely 5 feet tall, but in the tiger cage, she was untouchable. By the 1920s, she was Ringling Brothers' top trainer, her act the most dangerous and adored. Every scar she carried told a story. In 1928, 2 tigers mauled her, shredding her body so badly she needed 378 stitches. Weeks later, she limped back into the ring. In 1950, another attack nearly tore off her arm. Surgeons saved it with 175 stitches, and she still refused to quit. For 57 years, Mabel faced down tigers with nothing but nerve. The crowds loved her courage, the circus loved her profit. But time and cruelty caught up. After being fired from her final job at Jungle Land, she overdosed in 1968. Her death was her choice, her exit on her own terms. Mabel didn't tame tigers. She faced them again and again until the world finally stopped watching. She was a brave and beautiful woman. While she is not as famous as Monkey Girl, she is one of a kind. Number 2. Baron Pauci. Peppino Magro, born in Sicily in 1894, made his name as Baron Pauci, the world's smallest perfect man. Barely 15 inches tall as a child, he first gained fame for surviving an earthquake that crushed everything but him. Coming to America, he joined the Ringling Brothers and later became a fixture at Coney Island's Dreamland Circus sideshow. Pauci wasn't just short, he was sharp. He dressed loud, lived fast, and drank harder than most men twice his size. His humor and vanity made him a favorite with audiences and a headache for circus bosses. He flirted endlessly, gambled often, and fought with anyone who tried to tame him. In 1931, he married Mavis Lane, 5 feet tall and endlessly patient, until she wasn't. The marriage cracked under his antics. By the mid-1930s, Pauci returned to Ringling, still strutting, still bragging, still adored. He was proof that a man's size means nothing when his attitude fills the room. Number 1. The Rubber Man. James Morris, born in 1859, lived with Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, a rare condition that made his skin stretch like soft rubber. He learned early that what shocked others could feed him. He could pull the skin on his face and stomach nearly 18 inches from his body without pain. The circus saw profit, and soon he was traveling with Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey as the Rubber Man. Audiences gasped, recoiling and applauding all at once. But behind the act came pain. The constant pulling left bruises and raw welts that healed badly. When the crowds moved on to newer oddities, James fell into obscurity. He worked as a barber, gambled, and drank just to keep going. By the early 1900s, he vanished from public record entirely. No one knows how or when he died. Like his skin, his fame stretched too far, and when it finally snapped, it left nothing but silence behind. We hope you found this video interesting. If you did, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Thanks for joining us on this journey, and we'll see you very soon.